Chapter 5. Ratty Rupert was the bravest rat that ever was. Everyone in Furry Bottom said so. From Mr. Bunsey Has an Adventure. Darktan was in a tunnel several streets away, hanging from 4 bits of string attached to his harness. They were tied onto a stick, which had been balanced like a seesaw on the back of a very fat rat. 2 other rats were sitting on the other end, and several other rats were steering it. Darktan was hanging just above the teeth of a big steel rat trap that completely filled the tunnel. He squeaked the signal to stop. The stick vibrated a little under his weight. "I'm right over the cheese," he said. "Smells like Lanka Blue Vein, extra tasty. Not touched. Pretty old, too. Move me in about 2 paws." The stick bounced up and down as he was pushed forward. "Careful, sir," said one of the younger rats who crowded the tunnel behind the trap disposal squad. Darktan grunted and looked down at the teeth, an inch away from his nose. He pulled a short piece of wood out of one of his belts. A tiny sliver of mirror had been glued to one end of it. "You lot move the candle this way a bit," he commanded. That's right. Let's see now." He pushed the mirror past the teeth and turned it gently. "Ah, just as I thought. It's a Prattle & Johnson little snapper, sure enough. One of the old Mark III's, but with the extra safety catch. Oh, that's come a long way. Okay, we know about these, don't we? Cheese for tea, lads." There was nervous laughter from the watchers, but a voice said, "Oh, they're easy." "Who said that?" Darktan said sharply. There was silence. Darktan craned his head back. The young rats had carefully moved aside, leaving one looking very, very alone. "Ah, nourishing," said Darktan, turning back to the trap's trigger mechanism. "Easy, is it? Glad to hear it. You can show us how it's done then." When I said easy," Nourishing began, "I mean, Inbride's shown me on the practice trap and he said, 'No need to be modest,'" said Darktan, a gleam in his eye. "It's all ready. I'll just watch, shall I? You can get into the harness and do it, can you?" But I couldn't see so well when he showed us, come to think about it, and "I'll tell you what," said Darktan. "I'll work on the trap, shall I?" Nourishing looked extremely relieved. "And you can tell me exactly what to do," Darktan added. Nourishing began. Now she looked like a rat prepared to rejoin the whittling squad really quickly. "Oh, jolly good," said Darktan. He carefully put his mirror away and pulled a length of metal out of his harness. He prodded the trap carefully. Nourishing shuddered at the sound of metal on metal. "Now, where was I? Oh, yes, there's a bar and a little spring and a catch. What shall I do now, Miss Nourishing?" Nourishing stuttered. "Things are creaking here, Miss Nourishing," said Darktan from the depths of the trap. You wedged the thingy." "Which one is the thingy, Miss Nourishing? Take your time. Oh, whoops, this bit of metal is wobbling, but don't let me hurry you in any way." "You wedged the thingy Nourishing's eyes rolled wildly. "Maybe it's this big snap. Ah! Nourishing fainted. Darktan slipped out of the harness and dropped onto the trap. "All fixed," he said. "I've clipped it firm. It won't off now. You boys can drag it out of the way." He walked back to the squad and dropped a lump of hairy cheese onto Nourishing's quivering stomach. "It's very important in the trap business to be definite, you see. You're definite or you're dead. The second mouse gets the cheese." Darktan sniffed. "Well, no human coming here would have any difficulty thinking there's rats around now." The other trainees laughed in the nervous, tittering way of people who've seen someone else attract the teacher's attention and are glad that it isn't them. Darktan unrolled a scrap of paper. He was a rat of action, and the idea that the world could be pinned down in little signs worried him a bit. But he could see how useful it was. When he drew pictures of a tunnel layout, the paper remembered. It didn't get confused by new smells. Other rats, if they knew how to read, could see in their heads what the writer had seen. He'd invented maps. It was a drawing of the world. "Amazing stuff, this new technology," he said. "So, there's poison marked here, 2 tunnels back. Did you see to it, Inbrine?" "Buried and whittled on," said Inbrine, his deputy. "It was grey number 2 poison too." "Good rat," said Darktan. "That's nasty eating." "There were dead kikis all round it." "I'll bet there were. No antidote for that stuff." We found trays of number 1 and number 3 too," said Inbrine. "Lots of them." "You can survive number 1 poison if you're sensible," said Darktan. "Remember that, all of you. And if you ever eat number 3 poison, we've got some stuff that'll sort you out. I mean, you'll live in the end, but there'll be a day or two when you wish you were dead. There's lots of poison, Darktan, said Imbrine nervously. More than I've ever seen before. Rat bones all over the place. Important safety tip there, then, said Darktan, setting off along a new tunnel. Don't eat a dead rat unless you know what they died of. Otherwise you'll die of it too. Dangerous Bean says we shouldn't eat rats at all, said Imbrine. Yeah, well, maybe, said Darktan. But out in the tunnels you have to be practical. Never let good food go to waste. And someone wake up nourishing. A lot of poison, said Imbrine as the squad moved on. They must really hate rats here. Darktan didn't answer. He could see the rats were already getting nervous. There was a smell of fear in the rat runs. They'd never come across so much poison before. Darktan didn't usually worry about anything and hated to feel the worry starting deep in his bones. A small rat out of breath scurried up the tunnel and crouched in front of him. Kidney, sir! Number 3 heavy whittlers! It burst out. We found a trap, sir! Not like the usual sort. Fresh walked right into it. Please come! There was a lot of straw in the loft over the stables, and the heat of the horses coming up from below made it quite snug. Keith was lying on his back, staring at the ceiling and to himself. Maurice was watching his lunch, which was twitching its nose. Right up until the time he pounced, Maurice looked like a sleek killing machine. It all went wrong just before he jumped. His rear rose. It waggled faster and faster from side to side. His tail slashed at the air like a snake. Then he dived forward, claws out. Squeak! Okay, here's the deal, said Maurice to the shivering ball in his claws. You just have to say something. Anything. Let me go, maybe. Or even help. Squeak, unfortunately, does not cut the mustard. It's just a noise. Just ask and I'll let you go. No one can say I'm not highly moral in that respect. Squeak! Screamed the mouse. Fair enough, said Maurice, and killed it instantly. He carried it back to the corner where Keith was now sitting in the straw and finishing a pickled beef sandwich. It couldn't talk, said Maurice hurriedly. I didn't ask you, said Keith. I mean, I gave it a chance, said Maurice. You heard me, right? It only had to say it didn't want to be eaten. Good. It's all right for you. I mean, it's not as though you have to speak to the sandwiches, said Maurice, as if he were still bothered about something. I wouldn't know what to say to them, said Keith. And I'd like to point out that I didn't play with it either, said Maurice. One swipe with the old paw and it was goodbye, that's all she wrote. Except that obviously the mouse didn't write anything, not being intelligent in any way. I believe you, said Keith. It never felt a thing, Maurice went on. There was a scream from somewhere in a nearby street, and then the sound of crockery breaking. There had been quite a lot of that in the last half hour. Sounds like the lads are still at work, said Maurice, carrying the dead mouse behind a pile of hay. Nothing gets a good scream like sardines dancing across the table. The stable doors opened. A man came in, harnessed 2 of the horses and led them out. Shortly afterwards, there was the sound of a coach leaving the yard. A few seconds later, there were 3 loud knocks from below. They were repeated. And then they were repeated again. Finally, Militia's voice said, Are you 2 up there or not? Keith crawled out of the hay and looked down. Yes, he said. Didn't you hear the secret knock? Said Militia, staring up at him in annoyance. It didn't sound like a secret knock, said Maurice, his mouth full. Is that Maurice's voice? Said Militia suspiciously. Yes, said Keith. You'll have to excuse him, he's eating someone. Maurice swallowed quickly. It's not someone, he hissed. It's not someone unless it can talk. Otherwise it's just food. It is a secret knock, Militia snapped. I know about these things, and you're supposed to give the secret knock in return. But if it's just someone knocking on the door in, generalised spirits, and we knock back, what are they going to think is up here? Said Maurice. An extremely heavy beetle? Militia went uncharacteristically silent for a moment. Then she said, Good point. I know. I'll shout, It's me, Militia, and then give the secret knock. That way you know it's me, and you can give the secret knock back, okay? Why don't we just say, Hello, we're up here, said Keith innocently. Militia sighed. Don't you have any sense of drama? Look, my father's gone off to the rat house to see the other council members. He said the crockery was the last straw. The crockery, said Maurice. You told him about sardines. I had to say I'd been frightened by a huge rat and tried to climb up the dresser to escape, said Militia. You lied. I just told a story, said Militia calmly. It was a good one too. It was much more true than the truth would sound. A tap-dancing rat? Anyway, he wasn't really interested because there's been a lot of complaints today. Your tame rats are really upsetting people. I am gloating. They're not our rats, they're their rats, said Keith. And they always work fast, said Maurice proudly. They don't mess about when it comes to, messing about. One town we were in last month, the council advertised for a rat piper the very next morning, said Keith. That was Sardine's big day. My father shouted a lot and sent for Blunkett and Spears too, said Militia. They're the rat catchers. And you know what that means, don't you? Maurice and Keith looked at one another. Let's pretend we don't, said Maurice. It means we can break into their shed and solve the mystery of the bootlace tails, said Militia. She gave Maurice a critical look. Of course, it would be more satisfying if we were 4 children and a dog, which is the right number for an adventure, but we'll make do with what we've got. Hey, we just steal from governments, said Maurice. Only governments who aren't people's fathers, obviously, said Keith. So? Said Militia, giving Keith an odd look. Well, that's not the same as being criminals, said Maurice. But when we've got evidence, we can take it to the council. Then it won't be criminal at all, because we will be saving the day, said Militia with weary patience. Of course, it may be that the council and the watch are in league with the rat catchers, so we shouldn't trust anyone. Really? Haven't you people ever read a book? It'll be dark soon, and I'll come over and pick you up and we can shimmy the nodger. Can we? Said Keith. Yes, with a hairpin, said Militia. I know it's possible because I've read about it hundreds of times. What kind of nodger is it? Said Maurice. A big one, said Militia. That makes it easier, of course. She turned around abruptly and ran out of the stables. Maurice, said Keith. Yeah, said the cat. What is a nodger and how do you shimmy it? I don't know, a lock maybe? But you said... Yes, but I was just trying to keep her talking in case she turned violent, said Maurice. She's gone in the head if you ask me. She's one of those people like actors, you know, acting all the time. Not living in the real world at all, like it's all one big story. Dangerous Beans is a bit like that. Highly dangerous person in my opinion. He's a very kind and thoughtful rat. Yeah, but the trouble is, see, is that he thinks everyone else is like him. People like that are bad news, kid. And our lady friend, she thinks life works like a fairy tale. Well, that's harmless, isn't it? Said Keith. Yeah, but in fairy tales, when someone dies, it's just a word.